I guess I'm going to call everyone out, I guess, one by one as I read the bios, and you can come down. But first of all, I'd just also like to acknowledge that we're presenting and playing on the unceded lands of the Bunurong people. And yeah, like all of the joy and the art and music that we make is quite often off the dispossession of these people. And I mean, it's like NAIDOC week, but like any other week, go and engage yourself and go educate yourself and get inspired and listen to stories and walk this path of reconciliation together. Yeah, but I'm also really happy to be here tonight. Cool to be in Bunjil Place. My name's Billy. I work down at the Drum Theatre down the road in Dandenong. And I run a little event called Our Beat there, which is sort of just a performance showcase for, I don't like the word showcase, but like a performance platform for local artists from the Southeast to come and try new material or play old material, make new connections. And that's kind of, I guess, the springboard of what I'd like to talk about tonight. It's about music in the Southeast, arts in the Southeast, and like fostering community and forging the scene that's already here. There's so many amazing artists and pockets of talent and little communities and collectives that are operating all the time. And it's about like tapping into that. So without further ado, I'd love to invite some of the artists up. Firstly, which you would have just heard, with rich vocals and a beautifully played ukulele, Chantelle Riordan performs jazz standards and engaging original music. A diverse and respected performer, she enjoys entertaining crowds at ukulele festivals throughout Australia, as well as other local community music events, including the Berwick Show and several local Carols by Candlelight events. She's also leads the Bala Bala Ukes group at the Bala Bala Community Centre, is a life member of the Cranbourne Lions Concert Band, and won the City of Casey's Lindsay King Arts Award in 2018 for her contribution to the arts community. Round of applause and welcome up to Chantelle. Come on down. Awesome performance, by the way. Yeah, really cool to hear the uke in that way and held together with such a powerful voice. They've all got to get switched on. That's a note for everyone else out there.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Sky Thomas, aka Soju Gang, which you may have heard her under that moniker before. A proud Gunai Kona Yorta Yorta and Wiradjuri woman, as well as a phenomenal DJ, designer, and fashionista, as you can tell by the coat that she's worn tonight. She may or may not wear it up on stage. With a standout style, remnants of the colourful 80s and 90s, she's a fashion force to be reckoned with in Melbourne's nightlife scene. Since becoming a DJ in 2017, she's been a name that's continually seen on posters, playing for some of Melbourne's most popular clubs, festivals, and array of events, including the VAMFF, NGV nights, and MIF summer screenings at Bunjil Place. I've personally seen her play a couple of times, and the bio's legit. So mixing everything from old school hip hop, R&B, and bail flips and future sounds. Her DJ sets are vibrant and super fun. Once again, can concur. Soju Gang also uses her craft as a mean for activism and raise supports and funds for Black communities. Hosting the Spinning in Solidarity event for the second year in a row, Soju Gang raised thousands of dollars for the Jajawa Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting families affected by Black deaths in custody. So another round of applause. Put your hands together. Let's start Thomas. Next on the list, another guy I've had the pleasure of seeing play a few times. Local artist Rjayvida is an indie hip hop artist and producer from Melbourne, Australia, with an underdog mentality, a versatile arsenal of flows, and a passionate DIY attitude. Rjayvida embarks on a journey to make his presence felt throughout the rap game of Australia. He's got a really hard work ethic and a really lovely soul, and he's a really great guy to have along to any show or turn even a crowd of 12 into like a busting house party vibe. So I'd like to give another round of applause to RJ. Ariel Blum, who I'll probably call Arik several times tonight. We've worked together for quite some time and collaborated on a few things. He's a Melbourne-based music producer who's worked with artists including Nyasha, Emily Waramara, Sinives, Jackie Toot, Alara, H, Gordon Coang, and UK artist Florence and the Machine, just to literally, that's a super truncated list. one of Ariel's or like biggest, I think one of your biggest like tick lists is he co-founded Grid Series, which is a nationwide artist development platform that supports outer suburban emerging creators in Australia. And for 10 years, which blows my mind, Grid Series has served as a bridge between industry and historically ignored and under-resourced communities in outer south suburban suburbs and regions, like especially around here in the southeast, collaborating to develop ideal environments for artists to thrive. And I think that, yeah, it's the work that like Ariel and his team have done out here and in other outer regional suburbs is like all about what we're talking about tonight. And it's been really, really great to identify and like see some of the amazing talent that they've unearthed and worked with and like helped prosper through their program. So yeah, give it up to Ariel. And last but absolutely not least, a cliche, but it needs to be said. Breanne Peters is a gifted and talented musician, singer-songwriter based in Turin. She began classical piano and classical guitar at age 3, and by age 7, she was learning acoustic and electric guitar, bass guitar, drums, and voice. And at age 8, her love and passion for music led her to public performances and songwriting as an 8-year-old. Breanne graduated at the Victorian College of the Arts Secondary School in 2021, where she studied classical and jazz guitar, and she plays a variety of genres, but her passion is for her multicultural, and she incorporates into her songwriting. Many of her songs in Te Reo Maori are the indigenous language, in the indigenous language of New Zealand. And also, if you're wondering what that's going to sound like and you don't have Spotify, you're in for a treat tonight because she'll also be doing a full performance. So one more round of applause for Breanne. How's everyone doing tonight?
Cool. Good.
Let's just roll this like popcorn because I feel like, is everyone mics on?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, nice,
Check.
cool. Everyone's buzzers checked. Okay, that's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's like such a wealth and variety of knowledge out here, and people have such different experiences and journeys as artists growing up in the area or working in the area. So yeah, we'll probably just popcorn with questions, and I have more questions than time, so we'll just roll with it. I just want to do a quick check with the audience just to help us like gauge this conversation. Can I get a show of hands? Who's a local artist that's in the audience? All right. Who lives in the southeast that's in the audience? Who works in the arts is in the audience? Cool. All right. Good to know. And who's here just for a gas? Matt. Good to have a few. Let's start on a positive note. What do you all think the benefits of being a musician in the southeast are?
Well, not like the west side where there's a lot of artists that are getting a lot of, I guess, exposure. The southeast isn't as tapped. There's a lot of talent here, and I'm friends with a lot of them, but yeah, it's just untapped. So if we break into that, I think it's going to unlock a lot of things, just like we've seen with a lot of local artists. When they make it past that local stage, they just blow up. So yeah, in the southeast, there's heaps of talent, but just, I wouldn't say not opportunities, there's opportunities, but it's just, there's a missing link.
I'd like to continue on with that. I think what's really amazing with the Southeast is the self-sufficiency that's been created out here because we are so untapped. Like the West Side gets a little bit more recognition and opportunity when it comes to that. People out here, like we've got so many different artists who do so many different things. They work together, they collaborate, they put on their own events and parties and that. So it's kind of like created this mentality where it's like, no one's going to help me do it, so I'm going to do it for myself. And that's what I think is really beautiful about a lot of people who come from the Southeast to create music.
I'd agree with that. I think the community here is fantastic, like, you know, for supporting people getting started and just putting on events and things to encourage people to come along. But I think definitely the community just rallies around each other and helps provide those opportunities. So yeah, I'd 100% agree with that.
Couldn't agree more. The talent out here, like I said, is incredible. Yeah, one thing that I've noticed, and I grew up in the West, like no shade, I was from the West Side originally, but there were also like heaps of venues out there when I was growing up, and there still are now. So like relative to working around here, I've been around here for like 5 years. That's something that I've seen as being like one of the challenges about like being an artist around here, but I'd love to hear from people that are actually grown up as artists around here what you think the challenges of being an artist out here are, if there are any.
I think it's yeah, it is the DIY attitude, or like having to look at yourself to make it. I think that is good in a way, but it causes a lot of chips on the shoulders, if that makes sense. If you guys don't know, the only professional person I've worked in this industry by far is Eric. He was the first professional studio I've ever went to, where there's a lot of artists that should have been there before me. You know, maybe it's just where God works, but yeah, I feel like that's kind of the blessing and the curse of being in the Southeast, where you can be self-sufficient, but then it's kind of like you might have a chip on your shoulder when you go and meet other artists. Like for me, I prefer to work by myself now, where before I want to collab with a lot of artists, where it's like I don't need it. But yeah, so I don't know, it's 50-50.
I'm a bit bits and pieces everywhere. I think in terms of working collaboratively, there isn't a lot of like actual community spaces to do that. Like you'd have to go to someone's house, or you'd have to meet up with somebody and then go maybe hire a studio to do so or whatsoever. We've got some great venues out here, but I think it's making the actual genuine connection with the people that are around here. I guess in regards to council, as someone who's previously worked in council, that bio, I think I sent in an old one, but I have like history working in council, lots of music. I do a lot of events curation and that as well. Working council, and this obviously is not for every single council. I think Casey's one of the people who actually does it well. But walking around those offices, a large majority of the people who work in these councils aren't actually from the municipality. So it's like trying to create those genuine connections with people to find out exactly what people want and need and what to see in their community, and the things that they want to have access to, I think are a little bit harder. You know, we can do surveys, we can do reach outs and that, but I don't do them. I don't know a lot of people who would fill out a survey or anything. I guess as well, I'm sorry to do this. You know, I think especially with the Southeast, we have a large demographic that's extremely multicultural. Historically, we do not have a good relationship with government. So it's, I think a lot of it is actually building up that proper relationship as well. Having the understanding of, you know, think like majority of us sitting on here don't have, like historically, our communities don't have a good relationship with government. So being able to reach out and say, hey, we'd actually like these things, or maybe we need help with something, or maybe can I put forward for something to get a budget, is something really hard for us to do, because we have been a DIY, self-sufficient, completely, you know, self-functioning communities, that having that move to reach out is something that we don't usually do. And I think that's a bit harder when it's council trying to create those connections as well. Like you're going to have to put in a little bit of extra work with that. Yeah, I didn't know I was going to do that so early, and sorry.
No,
Yeah.
don't apologize. It's like totally necessary to hear that here. So.
On that, I find that for me, it's not my place to ask for something like that. I feel like I want to give that opportunity to First Nations people first before me. I don't need that. So that's why I find DIY is definitely my place to go to, because I help myself. I can ask the people around me to help me, but I hardly ever go to the council, to the government and ask, because I feel like that's not my place to do that. Yeah.
I think going back to the challenge question, I think and one of the things I've sort of indicated is just for someone emerging like myself, there's not really a lot of opportunities to perform locally. A lot of my gigs actually come from well outside the city of Casey. So for me, you know, it might be different types of performance types, I guess, where there's opportunities locally. But for me, I have to travel to the northern suburbs, up to the hills, down to Mornington or something, just to be able to get any kind of gig, let alone a paid gig. So for me as an emerging artist, it's really challenging to find those opportunities locally, especially being so niche in jazz. It's very different to, you know, something that might be more culturally relevant locally as well. So that makes it even more challenging.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think like another challenge that I've observed is, I guess, a lot of that north-south divide stuff that happens in Melbourne, and I think the southeast, you know, as someone who has spoken a lot about working in the southeast, to advocating for, you know, more resources to come to these kinds of areas, it's often met with oh, what's going on in the southeast, and it's it's incredibly disappointing that that's how, say, the kind of tastemaker crews in the north or the west sort of might view the outer southeast. I think it's changing a little bit now, but I think just go back to what Rjay was saying earlier, like that sort of invisibility is also in and of itself like what's really cool about what's going on in the southeast. And I think as like scenes and culture comes up in areas historically, the spaces that sort of get to sort of operate without that kind of intervention and that magnifying glass of trying to be something that is fashionable somewhere else, that can also create like a more organic culture in the area. So I think that there's a sort of a blessing and a curse of this sort of isolation that takes place in the outer southeast when you kind of compare it to different parts of Melbourne.
Can I continue on with that? It's really interesting you say that, because I have a personal view. It's a bit biased, but I feel like the west side say stuff, the southeast does stuff. We like you were just talking about how like the west side and the north side, they talk about like all like we know about the stuff that they do in that, but it's like if you look at all the main events that are running in the city, whether that's live music, whether that's the clubs that have existed for like 15, 20 years, people who are doing big stuff, they're actually all from the southeast. Like all the hip hop, R&B, reggae, soul stuff for the past 15, 20 years that are based on Chapel Street, in the CBD, even out a bit further if you're going to somewhere like Third Day, which is this big warehouse. These are places and people that are all from out here, but I think it's the lack of venues, I guess. Like we've got some really amazing venues here out in the southeast, but like the Drum Theatre is amazing, but it's like it's all seated. If I'm seeing like a hype like MC or a DJ or whatever, I don't want to be sitting in my seat. I want to be able to get up and I want to be able to stand up and dance with my friends. I think there's a really great opportunity for us to be able to create things like that. But it's like we've got the venues, but I think it's more about how do we create those spaces to fit for exactly the kind of things that we want to be putting in there, I guess.
That's wicked. That kind of leads into what I wanted to ask next. It's because it's like, okay, so there's maybe a little bit of untapped talent. There's awesome community connections. There's heaps of like DIY, hard work ethic. And there's also like good venues out there and that people don't have connections with. So how would you see like the scene out here or the community out here like connecting all those dots and really like making use of the fact that, okay, there's a dope venue here and we've got an idea for it, and like we've got so many great artists here and we don't want to have to travel all around here to like do work. Like I hear like there's like a flip side to every opportunity is a challenge, and every challenge seems to be like an opportunity. So what do you see as like a way through that as an arts community together?
I was going to say, I've often thought about hosting events and large-scale festivals and things, especially in the ukulele community. And there's a couple of really fantastic venues in the city of Casey that could house those types of events. But a lot of it's also volunteer-based as well. So sometimes it relies on artists like ourselves to make these opportunities happen for ourselves. And if you don't have that strong community behind you to actually help make these things happen, it just kind of falls by the wayside, because it's really hard to actually get that momentum if you don't have the volunteers to help. So that kind of support is also really needed.
Yeah, I think just from, I guess, my experience of doing some work out here, and I'm not a out of southeast person. I grew up a little bit closer to town, just in Gardenvale area. But having done a lot of work out here, I think I guess if I can just share a story. I was working with an artist out here. We had a rehearsal at a place called is it the Factory? Yeah, Factory. And it's actually the sister of someone in the audience. We're having that rehearsal, and I noticed that across the road that there was this great big skate park called the Shed, and I think I'd also been talking to you, Rjay, about like places to do shows in the outer southeast, to try and kind of find a space that felt like, welcoming and comfortable for, this sort of music that was getting put up. And we sort of went and contacted the Shed and asked to see if we could put on a festival in there, and that they said yes. we did some kind of advocacy work to sort of get the funds to get it up. But I think once we started sending the message out that an event was happening in a space that doesn't usually get used for live music, it created a level of buzz and interest potentially locally that was able to kind of generate interest and people attending. And I think often from kind of council spaces, like the over design of trying to create a space that's like a performing arts centre or somewhere where you can host regular gigs sort of takes the danger factor out of where young people might want to congregate. So I think there's an opportunity out in Cranbourne and Casey in particular, just for potentially like individual operators to take a risk and take a chance on perhaps just putting some stuff on low key in a way that creates that level of kind of, when I say danger, I mean something that's cool and people kind of want to speak about or tell a story about. So it might be, someone's barbershop who closes up and puts stuff on after hours. That's a story that can catch fire really quickly and people might want to go to that. So I think there's an opportunity to kind of experiment and test some things out, which are a bit sort of risky, so to speak. But I feel like that's a huge element in what can kind of sustain and create spaces where young people might want to gather.
I think as well, which I found has always been like a plus for me, is the access to information that I get. I think there's such a lack of information on how to do these things. Like if you want to put on a block party, it's actually not that hard. You might need, you just need to get a permit or just get okays from the council. You can get somebody who's got an RSA, so then alcohol can be served. Being connected up to somebody who does like cheap or is working with council to get set up with music equipment. But it's this information that we don't have that I think if these things were like packaged up of like, okay, if you've got like a barbershop and you want to put an event there, here's A, B, C, D, and E that you need to do. I think it's also about council wanting to be part of those things as well and being like, okay, maybe you might need a permit, but maybe we can help you out with that. Like maybe having like a set of funds that are specifically for community to specifically lead. I think what I would like to see more from council is kind of letting go of the reins a bit. Councils, and I can understand from working in them, it's like, you've got to tick all these boxes and make sure everything's going okay. But I think sometimes it takes the danger out of it if it's like a council run event, knowing that it has to fit into this very specific niche box of how that event's supposed to be run. But I think having good relationships with people and artists and event organizers to be like, okay, this is what we need to do. If you want to run an event, we're going to help you out with it, but we're going to let you be the person who's in charge of that as well. So I think it's just more so about information and having that, trying to develop that actual relationship with the people that are living around here.
Can I just piggyback one more point, just real quick? No, you go ahead. Okay. Like you make such an amazing point about that idea of knowledge in relation to just trying to pull something off, and I think you're spot on about some of like those barriers that they're not necessarily there to necessarily repel people, but they're so onerous and incredibly terrifying, especially when you're putting money into something that in a heartbeat the whole thing might collapse. I think there could be better pathways in to, I guess, one of the big factors that can influence the success of a gig is a good, a relationship with Victoria Police to make sure that if your noise hits a mark, that they're not going to come and just shut it down. And all that needs to happen was just a slight pivot is to just come in a friendly way and say, hey, just need to turn the decibel element down a fraction as opposed to a hard shutdown. And we've got an example. We did a party in Western Sydney where there were no venues around, and we found a record store in the main mall in Parramatta, and we had again some pretty ballsy operators who said, yeah, you can bring a PA system and just like crank music, and it was a pretty loose evening, but the police came and there were that 250 people crammed into it to a store, but like to their credit, they didn't come in heavy-handed, and they just sort of gave us a bit of a nudge to say, just, you know, wind it back and, you know, you can continue on. And then, you know, that was just a good example of just some slight changes to how things kind of operate, that can just make people feel more comfortable putting things on.
I was going to add to that, really, and it's about, I think, education of venues. So if we use the barbershop example, it's about letting the barbershop know exactly what their requirements are, not only from that, but from a safety perspective, from a music licensing perspective, what types of equipment they might need, how they might, you know, acoustically treat that space so that, you know, people aren't going to walk out with harsh ears, you know, going. So making sure that that space is good for music and live music in particular, obviously, but making sure that they are aware of all of the safety requirements, making sure that gear is tested and tagged, and what types of equipment might actually be suitable for that space. Like, do they need to have their own PA gear, or is it expected that the artist is going to be able to bring that in? If they do have a house system, do they have someone who actually knows how to run it? So actually providing the venues with that education to help enable those opportunities would be good too. And I think, you know, to your point in terms of packaging that, I think that's where it comes in key, where you can provide training for venues and say, hey, if you would like to host live music, this is what's expected, this is the basics, but also these are the benefits for you as a venue to be able to host this music and bring people into your space.
That's really awesome and well put. So just to recap, in an ideal world, we've got councils that have equipment and an administrator that does event producing on the go, and then independent artists or an independent venue or a shop or something can, like, you know, have an idea and put something on or not. Like, I think that, like, for me, what I hear from everyone is that there's huge opportunity where collaboration and mutual trust exists. And now I've worked on both sides of the council fence, and like I really see that. It's like, oh, I've got a cool idea, but no, or it's like, oh, we really want artists to populate this really cool idea we have, but like we don't know how to reach people because we haven't built that relationship with folks. So if you were an artist and these sorts of, and some of these resources do kind of exist, if you're an artist, like, do you think that it's currently easy to access these resources or to learn about what's out there? And what would you suggest to someone that has an idea at this stage?
As someone who used to like work for council, I find council websites to be the most daunting things in the world. Understandably, you need to have so much information there, but I think, I don't know, there needs to be a bit more like easy access, like I guess visually. I think we're, as a generation, we're so much more visually put in. Like I click onto council things and it's like lists, tabs, articles about stuff, and I'm just like, where do I find the certain information that I'm actually looking for? I'm somebody who is very, very lucky because I'm planning on hopefully doing something with City of Casey next year, that I just know the right people to talk to be like, hey, but that's not usual knowledge, and having that relationship as well is not something that people have. I think, yeah, there definitely needs a way to build that relationship. But yeah, it's just, yeah, a little bit just more. I wouldn't say you'd need necessarily like an in-house events producer. I think maybe just like making sure people can do this themselves. And like everybody, if you live around here, we know kids can throw their own parties. Like we were in trouble for years for throwing our own parties. These kids organize sound systems, music, artists, venues. They hired their own security system. They marketed all that. These kids can do it. It's actually like, I think when we think of like events producing, that it's such a daunting thing and you need to have like all these things going on. You need to have all this knowledge. I think being somebody who first and foremost wants to do it and has a real passion for it is like the best thing that anybody could possibly have, because skills can be learned. Skills are so easy to be learned. And a lot of the stuff that a lot of us are already doing as artists, we already have heaps of these skills from different areas, but where can be transferred over. So I think it's, yeah, it's developing that relationship, maybe just having these packages and having like a sit down being like, cool, if you want to do these things, these are the things that you need to look at. Like, we need to know, obviously, that you're going to be able to carry it out. But just be more sort of like this support that's been like, okay, if you have any questions, we've got someone here. Here's some documents for me. There you go.
It's just like, you know, with the venues, it's the same thing about, you know, also educating the artists, right? And in showing them the way, right? Helping them find these venues and these opportunities, but also to helping them to understand what they need to do in order to get these opportunities, right? So you need to, you know, have your own public liability and, you know, have all your insurances sorted. And it's just like basic checklists. These aren't difficult things to do, but if you haven't been shown that way, it can be really daunting. So, you know, helping them, if they're a songwriter, helping them understand that they can, you know, get their songs licensed with APRA and they can get their royalties, and just helping them understand all of the steps and avenues that are available to them. So again, I think it really does boil down a lot to education, I think, both from the venues, but also from the artists, and helping them understand how to promote themselves. Like maybe it's a website. It doesn't have to be an expensive website. It could be a free thing, but like, you know, maybe it's a YouTube with a few videos or whatever it is, but helping give them some steps of what is expected of them in order to get these opportunities as well. So when they're presenting themselves to a venue saying, hey, I would like to put on this, you know, amazing event, this is me, and then here's my package of what that represents.
That sounds really awesome. Go for it, man.
I think like one thing that council have kind of, this is an assumption, but like access to so much as information is who's building things in the municipality. As in like what construction projects are happening, what private developers are knocking buildings down, and what you notice in so many suburban environments is the amount of kind of spaces that are on hold whilst, you know, massive cranes are coming in 3 months, 6 months. And there's such an incredible opportunity for those sites to be spaces where, you know, a pop-up festival can happen or a live gig can happen, which doesn't have the sound restrictions that are onerous, say, in a city area. So I think there's an opportunity for, I guess, councils, you know, or brave councils perhaps, to sort of look at all those unutilized spaces, negotiate with private developers to give artists a space to congregate in the time where those sites are unused. And when you see the amount of construction that's going on in Victoria at the moment, it's crazy how much site is just sitting there where artists are screaming for places to actually be able to do things. So I think council probably have an insight into what's going on and what's getting built in the region. So perhaps that's an opportunity for council to step in and go, yeah, we could make some of those spaces available.
There's also there's some venues that we've looked at in the Cranmer Lions concert band when I was on the committee there. One of the things that we would look at doing is looking for public places where we could just take the community band, right? This isn't even a paid opportunity. It's just like, we'd like to take the band out into the community and perform. And we found some public squares, and when we looked into it, basically these were owned by the shopping centre, and when we sort of got through to the shopping centre, they were just kind of like, no, we're not doing that. Thank you very much, but no. So sometimes there are barriers that are in place for even something as simple as just using a public square, or what seems to be a public square, you know, because it might be owned by, you know, a private company, you know, and it makes it, there's those additional barriers for something that would actually be, you know, great for the community, and, you know, enables, you know, not only music and a performance opportunity for the community group, but also, you know, provides entertainment for the community as well. But those barriers can get in the way.
And there's like what I'm hearing is just sort of barriers on both sides of the fence as well. It's like council could do all these awesome things if only they would connect with artists, and it's like artists could do all these awesome things if only they were like educated or realized how many skills they already have and be able to like manifest them in a venue and take that leap of faith. And like what I'm hearing here, and like call me out if I'm wrong, was like there could be a leap of faith on both sides. Like council people, if you're listening, like go to local events and like connect with artists, or like troll Instagram when you're not at work, because like that's the only way you're gonna really like find what's out there. And like for artists, like, yeah, those forms suck, those websites suck when you work there. I'm like, all right, I've got to pay someone new, I've got to get this form, I've got to fill that form out, I've got to sign them up. Like it sucks for everyone involved. But like sometimes just like finding a phone number and like calling up the right person and calling again. Like when I was at the theater, like most of the people I worked with were people that just walked in off the street or that I met like out at another event. So Like, yeah, I think that there's super huge opportunities, but everyone's sort of got to be in it together. And this is kind of like why we're all coming together tonight, right? It's like, how can we as a community in this like outer Southeast region come together and make amazing things happen? Because there's so much amazing talent, and there's heaps of like open buildings, and there's like all these great collabs going on, and so many DIY projects going on. Yeah, like, where do I go with that? Sounds like a wrap up, but it was meant to be a segue. What, like, I just like, what would you do if you're an artist? Like, just maybe, like, do you think that there's just one simple thing you can, like, a takeaway that someone can go and do? Like, if you have an idea, just go and do it. Go talk to the barbershop, or like go call the council, or like, what's the vibe with that? It's been your experience.
I say look for grants. It's one of the hardest things ever, and there's hardly any ever grants, and never a good variety of grants. So look for them. I sometimes wait months just to find something that fits for me. And that'd be something really cool for the council to provide us as well as artists, especially as artists doing it ourselves. Just not having those connections to people that can support you in that way, and also being kind of small in this huge music industry space. It's a huge world to navigate, and not having the support or the opportunity to be able to do that is really tricky, especially when you're doing it yourself. So I always look for grants. It's the one thing that gets me creating in a more professional space, that's more socially accepted as a professional artist. But yeah.
I would say just ask. I'm one of those, I was raised by a mother who also worked in council and in government and everything. And there's nothing wrong with asking. So like for the past couple of years, like mentioned, I did Spinning in Solidarity. We raised, I think, nearly $20,000 in the first year. And that was just asking a venue, asking a company who does like lighting and video and that if they'd like to help raise money. I have, over the past couple of years, I've worked with so many different brands. Recently, I worked with JD Sports because I just reached out and asked, like, hey, do you guys want to like help us out with like this event that we're doing? I reach out to council and be like, hey, can you give me money so I can throw an event? And I got that. Like, I think there's this, sometimes, you know, kind of like, I guess, like backpedaling from what we were saying before, is we feel like there's such a very specific way to get into things. Like, you've got to go talk to this person, they've got to link you to this, or you've got to fill out this, and this form. I usually just, if I can find them on Instagram, if I can find them through, like, find an email on LinkedIn, or if I can just Google something, put together a rough idea of what you want to create, figure out how this specific organization or person can fit into it, and just be like, hey, I have an idea. It's obviously not in a special document or whatever. It'd be like, this is the reason why I think you'd be working for it, and this is why I think you're going to be, like, it would be really important for you as well to be a part of this. But just ask questions. Like, what's the worst thing they're going to say? No. They're not going to, like, I don't know, strip you from being able to ever work in the space again, or make sure you can never contact them ever again. They just be like, okay, we can't do this right now. Maybe we'll put a pin in it and see if there's something we can do in the future.
And keep asking.
And keep asking.
Maybe they could also, I'm just sort of brainstorming just based on something there, but also just thinking maybe there's opportunity to provide venues with grants and incentives to help support live music as well. So maybe if they were able to get like a break on their rates, if they proved that they supported a certain amount of artists from the local municipality or something.
That is a sick idea as well. Everyone listening at home that has the checking books for that, definitely listen to that. Look, I've got like probably one more, and then we probably need to throw it to the audience. Like, so yeah, everyone here can make amazing things happen, and like there's some cool things, there's really great advantages to like having this organic independent scene going on that isn't trying to be or fit into anything else. I really liked that point that you made, Eric. Do you think the future of like the scene here is about getting whatever this like magic is that's happening in the Southeast out into the rest of Melbourne or to the world, or is it about is there a future of bringing audiences from around Melbourne here to like really like taste it at home?
Let's think about, when you think about that, let's think about events, right? Which events that are popping off right now or have a foothold in the music scene? If you look at St. Kilda Fest, yeah? People from all around Melbourne go to St. Kilda Fest. If we can run something like that here in the Southeast, then that would answer all those other questions. Okay, so, but the only problem is, what I find as an artist is that we have it all. We have the culture, bringing up the culture of the youth, getting them involved in creating events, building relationships with artists like me. That's how I got into the scene here. But it's the event and the timing of the event. Like, there was one event that would always stay in my mind, which was the Southeast, I think, jumped in. It was ran in 2019, but it was run in winter. You know what I mean? We're in Melbourne. We can't run an event in winter outside. PA system's gonna get wet. No one's gonna turn up. And then on top of that, we need food. You know what I mean? Like, the culture of having different type of culturally accepted foods that people would come and eat. You know, so there's a lot of things that we need to, I guess, execute properly. You know, capitalize on the moment. We can get all these grants, we can get all these opportunities, but if you don't execute, then it's kind of like no one's gonna give you no grant. People aren't gonna take you seriously. So, yeah, I think City of Casey does really well in giving opportunity, but it's just the execution, of how we're running it. You know, the timing, how we're promoting, how we're reaching out to people, going into the schools and actually asking kids, who's your popping off artist right now? Who's talented in this school right now? Bring them in. You know, that's how word of mouth is the best, I guess, the best promotion, right? So word of mouth, and kids are going to be talking about this if we let them. So I don't know. That's how I see it. I think we have the opportunities. It's just the execution.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Sorry, I talk a lot. If I had like the perfect amount of money or perfect amount of access, I would personally like a focus on like a community hub, like something that's got a music studio in it. It's got a hangout area. It's got a space that has an event space connected to it. Like, and it wouldn't even need to be that huge. Like, this room is a great use of space, but having somewhere where like everybody could come in, because at the end of the day, like, so many people in the Southeast travel to go to so many different events. And it's because some of those places just seem to have better services. It's just known to just travel into the city. But it's like, if we've got these spaces here and everybody knows about them, and it's somewhere where people can actually grow as artists as well. Like noting before about how artists themselves don't know things. Like, if you're a musician, you got to have like 6, 7, 8 different versions of that one song if you want to release it. You got to have radio, explicit, instrumentals, all that sort of stuff. But people don't know that. If you're somebody who's trying to get events like for a festival or a bigger event, do you know how to do a sound check? Like, do you know what your levels are? Do you know what you need to listen out for? These are things that just people don't know. I think it's, I don't think it's necessarily the focus that we should just be like, we want to have events out here. We want to do this. I think it's just making people feel confident enough that they can move forward with music. You know, that might be just having people be able to create the things that they want and not have to travel in the city to be able to follow it, or not have to travel somewhere else really, really far just to create it. And I think organically, having people more confident about that and having the accessibility to be able to do those things as well will organically create people wanting to throw events out here and people wanting to come and perform live music out here, because it's the execution. I think it's I think we're focusing on the wrong thing. Like, we've got like these little pieces of like hubs here and little pieces of culture, but if we can create from the ground out like an actual live music culture out here, rather than people who are live music artists or people who want to throw live music events, if there's an actual culture here, that's when people are going to swarm through and want to come and travel out here, and places will open up for people to be able to use them and all that sort of stuff.
I think it also comes down to planning, though. Also, like when they're planning communities and all the community planning teams, when they're building these community centres and shopping districts and restaurant districts, to actually plan for live music to actually be part of that. You know, if I walk down the main street of Cranbourne, I'm from Cranbourne, like there's very few venues that are doing anything music at all in Cranbourne. So it's, you know, there's dentist offices and there's real estates and there's, you know, a tiny little takeaway Chinese restaurant, but there's really not many live music venues available. So sometimes that can also come back to the community planning team and actually looking to create these spaces. So when there's new hubs being built, like at Marriott Waters, and they've got that beautiful restaurant district there, but a lot of them are big chains. They're not people that really support live music. So can we, invite or allow a certain number of those restaurant spaces to be independent, or put an onus on a percentage of those that they have to include live music to be part of that community, so enabling it in that regard as well.
Yeah, just to go back to your point about the community music hub idea, and having also dealt with lots of councils in the past, with the best of intentions with all of those council people, often the council themselves want to be the kind of holder of the hub, and that comes with it like a whole range of things that make it completely not work for musicians, which is really about opening hours, risk assessments, all sorts of things that, again...
Can't swear.
Sorry?
Can't swear.
Yeah, you can't swear.
They said can't swear.
And I think, to create spaces where people genuinely want to be involved, there needs to be a marriage between council funding and, I guess, sort of governance and private operators. And I think some ideas that could help that along are long-term, very, very cheap leases for someone or a number of people to have spaces in an area where they can not only set up a space, but also it has an opportunity to grow. A hub won't happen if you say, hey, there's a new music hub in town, and there's all this gear in there, and we're going to run it for the next 6 months to see how it goes, and then if it doesn't go well and we don't have the data that people are using it, we're going to close it. That's not how culture comes up. It's got to have like an opportunity to grow, to make mistakes, to learn. And fundamentally have an operator who is part of the cohort who are actually looking for a space. And I think if you kind of marry all that up together with the support of council, then that could certainly help build that system up.
Can I add one thing to what you just said there? Also, that it's not only the musicians themselves that are actually having to travel, but it's also all of the support crew and all of the sound techs and all of those guys that are also, like so many of them that I know, that are also having to travel to the city or northern suburbs or wherever to get gigs as well. So exactly that, like you need to have the right people, but give them a home to actually work in the southeast as well.
I really second that, because it's so hard for me as a musician with a band and with all the crew and all the support and everything, to find places in here in the southeast to collaborate in comfortable spaces like that. Often I'll have to drive out way into Collingwood and Richmond just to have a rehearsal in a space that, it's big, not too big, has everything provided for you. You don't need to bring all your gear, just bring your guitars and everything. And there's hardly any spaces out here, if like none, if any, to do that, other than like a music shop or something. So I really resonate with that in providing a space for us to just jam, to just record and because even recording like $20,000 to produce an album, and that's a lot of money, and when you can only go to places that are in the inner city, when there's nothing out here, it's like, well, you have to pay that $20,000 or that $50,000 because there's no other options to have access to anything else. And I guess that also comes under education, as we were talking about before, with being connected to people that can do things for you that isn't $20,000. But again, that comes across as word of mouth, and you have to connect with people, and if there's nowhere to do that, then you don't have those opportunities to be able to produce things like that. So
that's awesome. There's been a lot of gold out of this conversation. I would love to listen to it again. But like, it's not like, just to close before we throw it to the audience, it's like, you also don't have to be an artist or an arts worker or for the council, like if you love live music, then you love culture and you want to see the scene here grow and you're sick of going to Richmond to go to a party and you want to go to one local here, like you can do it too. Because like these folks are like busy rehearsing all the time. So like if you're not rehearsing and you're not working some like super long hours, like maybe give putting on a party or starting a barbershop that's also a live music venue a go, or like talk to people about like go and make the connections. Like the scenes, all scenes need like connectors and promoters and ideas people, and they need those like curators and people that bring people together just as much as you need like funding and artists and venues. And that can be anyone. That can
Even
be
just a house concert.
yeah, even just a house party that you have a permit for. And no, yeah, but 100%. So like I'm going to invite everyone to stand up for a second because all the blood's gone to all of your feet. So I want to get it back moving to the head so we get, or anywhere else where your brain may be located, so that we can get some good questions coming out from the audience. I'm just going to breathe in once and one out. That's enough for me. We can sit down. I think that Sarah, our illustrious host here, is going to walk around with a mic. So can I see some hands if people in the audience have a question for our panel here?
Hi all, amazing conversation. Thank you all so much. My question is, if you had a Southeast fairy godmother, fairy godfather come out and just go, you've got one special wish for anything, I can make it happen for you in KC, what would be that thing that you would ask for, and what would it look like?
An event like St Kilda Fest, but here.
Fully funded for all the artists.
Fully funded.
I think I'd like the community hub. There's have you been to Collingwood Yards? Yeah. I think like Collingwood Yards is a really, really good example. If you don't know where that is, it's at like the old uni or something like that?
Some technical college.
Yeah, it's Oz Technical College, that spot.
It used to be that. They put like there's like an Ableton studio for people to come in and use. You can hire equipment there. A couple of people who are like emerging artists, whether that's fashion, art, whatever, you can go set up shop there. You pay like rent for a space, but it's quite reasonable considering what those spaces would usually be. They've got event spaces, they can hold stuff out in the courtyard there. Like it's just a space, and it has so many different uses, but people can go there to just even hang out as well. And I would love something like that here if I could have something.
State government, give $5 million for all those earmarked projects, please. Thank you. Councils aren't as rich as you think. They need the money. Please help them out.
I would like for there to be a precinct of venues that is just known for having live music, that you go, oh, I just want to go listen to live music, and you go to that strip of shops or restaurants and you know that you could walk in and there could be anything going. And I'd love to be able to see friends promoting concerts that are in Berwick or, you know, Cranbourne or Tooradin without having to always travel, you know, so far to get to them. So it'd be great to, I think, to have more venues hosting live music for me.
Any more fairy godmother answers?
Yes. Simply just some good sound equipment. I've done so many gigs and with such bad sound equipment, and it lowers your quality as a musician and then and as an artist, and you can't project like what you need to project to your audience, and you can't show people how what you truly are as an artist, because there's these amps that are just distorting your sound, and you have bad leads, and even just the equipment itself, it's just low quality, cheap equipment, and just, yeah, having some good equipment that can truly express your sound as an artist.
Just echoing everything everyone else has said. I'd add that to your point, the idea of not cutting corners on things is the difference between like all that buzz and excitement when something new comes to town, and then like the total meh-ness when the gear's a bit shit, or like there's 1% element that's not great. So I think there's got to be a kind of level of excellence that things get approached at with, in the same way like this incredible building was built with all of this amazing detail. That sort of headspace should be sort of kind of coming to the party with what, say, a community music hub might look like.
Wicked. Were there any other questions out in the audience this evening?
Hi, I was wondering, so we've heard a lot about maybe sort of like a vision for the future and where we are at the moment. My question is, what's the next step? What's the bridge? How do we get from where we are now, where we've got all this talent, a few scattered venues here and there? How do we get from here to a like thriving live music culture in the outer southeast? What's the bridge? How do we get there?
I think, I've been a previous member of the Arts and Cultural Advisory Committee that used to function here at the City of Casey. I did that for probably about 4 years or so, and that was a great body to, really push the arts. But I think something similar to that, but really focused just on live music. A lot of that conversation was around performing arts, but also visual arts and really just pushing galleries and that kind of thing and exhibitions. I would really like to see a dedicated forum between council, but also the business districts and, live artists, and actually really put into place some of these plans. I think that would be a great body to actually put in place.
I reckon it'd be go searching for some of these artists. Like we got District, whatever it's called here. They've been doing a lot of live music stuff attached to like their hip hop and R&B nights, and then check on their Instagram, see who else they're hanging out with, and then potentially finding a way to like reach out and be like, hey, you do like all this cool stuff. Is there anybody else that's doing something similar, or maybe not even, but it's still doing live music that are from the areas? I think kind of just trying to start those relationships with the actual people that are around here. Because I think personally, like building relationships is one of the most important things. Because without having these conversations with people directly that like live here and that have been creating career or really passionate hobby about music, all the intention can be there, but it's the execution of how you're going to do that. So I think trying to figure out exactly how you're going to get these genuine conversations started and these relationships and connections on the path to move forward.
I think with events and holding events, actually seeking local talent, oftentimes events will be finding people from every place except from where the event is. So yeah, seeking local talent.
Anymore, we're solving the problem here. So if you have any solutions.
It comes down to, it literally comes down to if you have a local artist that's kind of buzzing, we have to get around him and champion that person or that individual so you can create another buzz. But I think, it's just my opinion, especially in the sport of hip hop, a lot of it is like crab mentality. So trying to get getting an artist that's popping off, who had to do it himself, who's got a chip on his shoulder, to come back down and then uplift the community that didn't uplift the artist, it's a lot to ask for. So something has to give, not sure what will, but moving forward, if you see an artist that's in your local area, support them, regardless of what it is, whether it is sharing a post or visiting one of their shows or something like that. That's how it starts, but it's a domino effect. You won't get there overnight. Something that has to be built. Yeah.
I love that. I think we got time for one more, if you've got it, but also don't force yourself, because that's a great one to end on. Yeah, go for it, Dad.
I guess what drives you as an artist from when you first started, and then as a potential future to make this as a career? What makes you keep going on a day-to-day basis?
Well, just the pure love for it. I mean, I don't think you can do something that you don't go to work 9 to 5 and love it if you didn't love it. You know what I'm saying? So for me as an artist, I love creating things, just manifesting something in your room and then putting it out there, regardless of what it does, is pure, I guess, ecstasy for me. So that's what drives me.
Yeah, similar to RJ, I think just making things it gives your life meaning. It gives you purpose. It causes you great turmoil, and it also makes you incredibly happy. And I think artists often love surfing that wave between, you know, the turmoil and the ecstasy, and I think that kind of balance is what keeps me sort of, you know, very focused on continuing on that balance of those two poles of feelings.
I come from the need and want to support other rangatahi Pacifica or Maori, young people from the islands, and also our Indigenous cousins, wanting to give them the opportunities to be able to express their art, because our people are so artistic, our people are so creative, but always degraded and kind of just like rubbed off, and it's part of the culture, but I mean it is, but also it's a lot of work, and everything does come from a place of love also, but I specifically come from a place of empowerment for our young people, just giving them the opportunities that I wish I had as well, as an emerging artist, to be able to present myself and to just share and to also experience performing for events and for community festivals and things like that. Whether no matter how big or small it is, it's all an experience, and you learn something every time from your performances. And I feel the need to gift that to our rangatahi Māori, Pacifica, and Indigenous. But yeah.
For me, it's absolutely about connection. So I am kind of addicted to just working out songs and doing it, but it's all about that moment when you're standing up on stage and you have this magic moment when you know you've got everyone's attention and they are just 100% listening. There is something magic about that moment. And as a performer, it's very addictive. You spend a lot of time chasing that moment, and it can happen, you know, at the least times, you know, the most unexpected ways. You might be at a pub, at an open mic, or it's just something as simple as that, and everyone's just chattering and not really paying attention. They're just talking amongst themselves, and then you have that moment where you sing something and everyone just goes, ooh, and everyone quietens and they listen. And someone will start talking, walking in, and people are like, shh, shh, shh. Yeah, there's something about that moment that's very, very special. And I think that as a performer, we always chase these moments. And I think that's what drives me, is I'm always chasing that next moment.
I think I'm a little bit different because I'm not a, I would say per se, live music performer. But as a DJ, I got into DJ because one, I love music. I loved going out. And my main access was like, at least I'm going to get paid while I'm at the club. I was going to be at the club anyways, but now I'm getting money. But I've been extremely, extremely fortunate for DJing to create the career and the life that I have now. And what I love about live music and what it does is it's what I can do for other people, whether that's just making sure that people feel like they are safe, that they're welcome, that they have somewhere to have a good time. But it's also with the, I guess, sort of portfolio and persona that I've created as well, it's the access to creating other opportunities for other people, whether that's putting on events and putting on people I love, putting on artists that I love, whether that's graphics design, visual design, people who do like, I don't know, what's it called? Interior design, giving them the space to actually be exactly who they are. Usually if you're getting hired for something specific, you've kind of got to fit into that that niche of what exactly that event is. So you kind of usually have to, tailor yourself to fit a bit more into those things. It's being able to raise advocacy, because I personally haven't seen a lot of like Black Follow Mob. Recently, we've obviously had a really good push, but you've also pointed out as well, like the Pacifica community, hugely talented, but still very much so left in the dark, considering not only the support that they give others, but the like musical talent is literally like woven through your culture and history. But I guess it's the drive I get from live music is what I can do for other people and how I can create opportunity or create a feeling for other people as well. So I actually hate standing in front of people and having everybody look at me while I'm DJing. I made shirts.
That's really awesome. So that's about it for our question and answers time. If you love the live music scene, well, you got like 5 new artists you can follow on Instagram. You can listen to them on Spotify. If you need a new T-shirt, go get some Rjayvida merch instead of going to buy an Adidas T-shirt. You know,
Sold
like.
out.
Yeah, sold out. Oh, sold out. Yeah, yeah. But you know, like that's the flavor of the night. You know, like we all have like a part to play in creating and this awesome this awesome community and like industry, a creative like live music scene out of what's already here, and it's got all the parts that it needs. It just needs you. It needs everyone to like take a chance. So I'd like to get everyone to put their hands together for our awesome panelists tonight. And thanks for listening. Thanks for Bunjil for having us. We're not done yet. Very lucky we are. You all can go back to your seats except for Breanne, obviously, because next up we have a performance from Breanne Peters. It was obviously promised at the first of the night, and I like to have integrity with what I promised to the audience. So here we go. Thanks for listening to me. You've been amazing. And yeah, have a great night.